done the lights, so we open the hood. All right. First thing we want to do is check the oil. It's hot. You got to wipe it. And then reinsert it. And check to make sure it's got proper levels in it. Next, I want to check my coolant reservoir. It's securely mounted. It's not cracked or damaged or leaking. It's got a sight glass. I can see that it's got proper levels between the add and the max. I'm checking my hoses coming off of them, making sure the hoses are securely mounted and not cracked, bulging, or leaking. Next is my power steering reservoir. It's securely mounted. It's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. It's got a sight glass. I can see that it's got the right levels between the add and the max. Next, I'm going to check my hoses coming off of it, making sure they're not cracked, bulging, or leaking. Next, I'm checking my serpentine belt. I'm checking the belt to make sure it's not cut or frayed and it's not shiny. If it was shiny, it could be indicating it's rubbing up against something. Also checking the tension, make sure it's got between a 1/2 and 3/4 inch play. The serpentine belt on this truck runs my alternator and my water pump. I'm gonna walk over here and check them. I'm looking over here, making sure the alternator is securely mounted. I'm looking at my water pump to make sure it's securely mounted and it's not leaking. My air compressor and my power steering pump are both gear driven. Power steering pump is here, my air compressor is here. I'm looking at them to make sure they're not cracked or leaking. Next, I'm checking my steering gearbox. It is securely mounted, it's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Checking the hoses around them, making sure they're not cracked, bulging, or leaking. Next is my pitman arm. Securely mounted. My drag link, they're both securely mounted, they're not cracked or damaged. I've got castle nuts, got 2 of them, making sure the cotter pins are in place. Next, I'm checking my rubber bushings in between them, making sure they're not cracked or leaking. Next, I'm going to check my front spring hanger. It is securely mounted, not cracked or damaged. Checking my springs, they're securely mounted, they're not cracked or damaged, and they're not shifted left or right. Next are my U-bolts. They're securely mounted, not cracked or damaged. My rear spring hanger back in the back, it's securely mounted, it's not damaged either. Next is my shock absorber. It's securely mounted, it's not cracked, dented, or leaking. Next is my brake hose. It's securely mounted, it's not cracked, bulging, or leaking. Checking my brake chamber. It's securely mounted, it's not cracked, dented, or leaking. I'm checking to make sure the clamps are in place. Next is my slack adjuster and push rod. Slack adjuster and push rod is securely mounted. The push rod is not bent, and when I pull on it, it has no more than 1 inch of pull when the brakes are released. Next, I'm checking my brake drums and my brake linings. I'm looking at my brake drums to make sure they're securely mounted and not cracked or damaged. There's no holes. Looking at the brake linings to make sure they're wearing evenly. There's no excessive wear, and there's no oil or grease on either one. Checking the inside rim, make sure it's not cracked, dented, or welded. Looking at the inside tire face, make sure it's not cut, cracked, or bulging. Checking my tire tread here, make sure it's wearing evenly. No less than 4/32 of tire tread on the front. Outside tire face is not cut, cracked, or bulging. My rim is not cracked, dented, or welded. Checking my lug nuts, making sure they're all present. Looking for any rust trails or shiny threads that would suggest that they're loose. Also looking to make sure none of them are out of round. Next is my hub seal. It's securely mounted, it's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Next is my valve stem. It's securely mounted, it's not cracked or leaking. The cap is in place. At this time, I would take a pressure gauge and check for proper inflation. Next, I'm checking my mirror bracket. It's securely mounted, it's not damaged. Check my door. Make sure it opens and closes properly. Next, I'm going to look at my weather stripping. Make sure it's not torn or missing. Then I'm going to look at my hinges. Make sure my hinges are not damaged. Check my fuel tank, my steps, and my straps. They're securely mounted, they're not damaged. My fuel tank is not cracked, dented, or leaking. Check my cap. Make sure it's secure. Go up underneath the truck, I'm checking my frame and my cross members. I'm looking at my frame and cross members, make sure there's no broken welds, there's no holes in the frame that look like something came out of it. Next is my drive shaft. Make sure my drive shaft is securely mounted, it's not damaged. I'm looking at my U-joints, making sure they're not damaged and there's no foreign objects wrapped up around them. come right here. We're going to work a little different because the brake chamber is in the back. Next, I'm going to check my front spring hanger. It's securely mounted, it's not cracked or damaged. Checking my springs, make sure they're securely mounted, they're not damaged, and they're not shifted left or right. Next are my U-bolts, make sure they're securely mounted, they're not damaged. This bottom bar here is my torsion bar. Make sure it is securely mounted and it's not damaged either. Next is my rear spring hanger. It's securely mounted, it's not cracked or damaged. All right, while I'm sitting here, I'll go ahead and check my mud flap, make sure it's securely mounted, it's not cut or torn. At this point, I'm going to lay down underneath there. You can go there and look at it. Checking the brake hose, just like I did on the front. Checking that brake hose, checking to make sure it's securely mounted, it's not cracked, bulging, or leaking. Check that brake chamber, make sure it's not cracked, dented, or leaking. Make sure the clamps are in place. On the back side of it, I'm checking the slack adjuster and push rod. Make sure the push rod is not bent. You see the slack adjuster and push rod underneath it?
Yeah, right here.
Okay. Make sure the push rod is not bent and make sure it has no more than an inch of pull when the brakes are released. Next, I'm checking the brake drums and brake linings on the wheel. Just like on the front, check the brake drums. Make sure they're not cracked or damaged. There's no holes. Check the brake linings. Make sure they're wearing evenly. There's no excessive wear. And there's no oil or grease on either one. Check that inside tire face. Make sure it's not cut, cracked, or bulging. Go ahead and slide out here. You can look right here underneath this. Checking both tire treads. Making sure they're wearing evenly. There's no less than 2 seconds back here on the back. Look in between here. Checking the inside tire faces. Make sure they're not cut, cracked, or bulging. If you want to look up under here at the rim. Check that inside rim. These are butted wheels. Okay, that means there's no space or gap in between them. Also looking to make sure there's no crack, dents, or welds. And there's no foreign objects such as rocks or anything stuck in between there. Outside tire face is not cut, cracked, or bulging. Our rim is not cracked, dented, or welded. Checking my lug nuts, making sure they're all present. Looking for any rust trails or shiny threads that would suggest that they're loose. Also looking to make sure none of them are out of round. Check my hub seal. Make sure it's securely mounted, it's not missing any hardware, and it's not leaking. Checking my valve stems. We've got 2 valve stems. Making sure they're securely mounted and not leaking. Make sure the caps are in place. At this time, I would take a pressure gauge and check for proper inflation. We've already checked our mud flap. Here on the back, I'm going to check my clearance lights. Got 4 of them on this truck. They're red in color because they're facing towards the back. They're all clean. They're not cracked or damaged. Checking my brake light here. This is my left turn signal. It's a 4-way flasher and it's a brake light. It's red in color because it's facing towards the back. The clear part in the middle is my reverse light. Okay, it's clean, it's not damaged. This is my right turn signal, 4-way flasher, brake light, and running light on both of them. The clear part in the middle is my reverse light. These are red in color because they're facing towards the back. They're clean, they're not damaged. Next, I'm checking my muffler and my exhaust system here. I'm looking to make sure everything is securely mounted. I'm looking for any soot or carbon buildup that would suggest that I'm leaking. That's the pre-trip on the